Hello, and welcome to Learning Outcome Leaders, brought to you by Junior. I'm James. And I'm Scott, and on this podcast, you'll hear us chatting to higher education professionals who can talk the talk about how they've been there and done it.
We'll discuss some of their proudest and most ambitious projects and explore the most effective ways in which they've helped to improve and elevate their students' experience. In this episode, we're joined by Tyler Walsh, Director of the Center for Higher Education Innovation at the University of Central Florida, to discuss how AI chatbots are helping students to proactively jump over administrative hurdles. We explore Operation Insights and the university's massive shift from transactional advising to a relational coaching model that prioritizes student well-being. Want to find out more? Well, let's get into the episode.
Well, thank you for accepting to be on the podcast. How we normally like to start, and how we will start with the first question, is we are super interested in people's origin stories. So, what got you into the world of education, and what were perhaps some formative education experiences for you that brought you to where you are today?
Wow. I can go all the way back to the very, very start. I think when my kindergarten teacher asked me what I wanted to be, I answered that I wanted to be a teacher, and it was just that way for the rest of my life. How I got into higher education specifically, I was teaching high school, coaching and teaching high school for a while, and decided to go back to grad school, get my master's degree. And as part of my second master's degree program, I got connected with this group that was doing research on chatbots at higher education institutions. So, 24/7 text into a kind of AI enhanced chatbot. It was supposed to be this kind of 24/7 one-stop shop. You can get any questions answered, that kind of thing. They had been doing research on that for a few years and found that it was really working, right? It was bringing down some of the metrics that we wanted to bring down. It was increasing some of the metrics we wanted to increase. So they decided, let's see what happens if we do this at the course level. And we start texting kids, every Monday morning, you got this due this week. It's going to take you this long. Here's the link to go do it, kind of thing. So I got connected with that group doing chatbot research as the graduate assistant, which I kind of parlayed into getting a job at the National Institute for Student Success at Georgia State University in Atlanta, Georgia. And then from there, that was 3 years ago now. And so I worked with dozens of colleges and universities across the nation as a senior consultant there, helping them both identify and then kind of build programming and kind of new operations that helped dismantle some of the barriers students are facing here in American higher education. And University of Central Florida was one of my clients as I was a consultant there. And after working with them, they decided to hire me on to be the director of the Center for Higher Education Innovation here at the University of Central Florida. And that was almost 2 years ago now. So kind of always wanted to be a teacher, and made my way into higher education to not teach, but kind of be on the administrative side and help students, really.
That's fantastic. And when you sort of started taking you back to sort of the chatbot work and things like that, what was the sort of the scope for some of these chatbots? Was it things purely sort of around the logistics of a student, what office do I need to go to here, or was this something that sort of became an ever-growing sort of thing for different services and different access points for the university? How did that look?
Yeah, James, it's a great question. And you kind of hit the nail on the head with the impact, really, the kind of the very kind of scalpel tool, the way we like to think of the chatbot. So the chatbot can do both of those things, right? It's a 24/7 one-stop shop where a student could say, hey, I don't know where to park. Where can I park today? And chatbot answer them. Hey, I have this hold on my account, or I'm interested in the College of Business. What kind of majors are there, right? They can kind of be proactive and ask the chatbot questions. And both the chatbot at Georgia State and now the chatbot at University of Central Florida those are both designed using each student support unit or college or whatever department has information in the chatbot. Those are designed where that unit sends us, so my team manages the chatbot. They send us all the information that they would want a student to know, or like their kind of common FAQs. They'll send us those answers. Those answers live in a knowledge base. When a student texts in something about the library, the AI sees that word library and triggers back the response. Hey, it looks like you're talking about the library. You want to know its hours, where it is, what you can access, all this kind of stuff. So that's one half, kind of the reactive side, right? Students can kind of text into it. But the real value of the chatbot is the ability to proactively text students. So what we do now at UCF is we can identify a list of students. Say we just did this a month ago, actually. We identified a list of students who had a registration hold on their account, and registration was coming up in 2 weeks. So we got this list of students, we texted all of them, said, hey, in 2 weeks, you're going to be able to register if you get this hold off of your account. If you don't, you're not going to be able to register. Do you need help getting this hold off of your account? Reply 1 if you want help, reply 2 if you're all good. And then all the students who reply 1, we take that list, give it to our group of academic advocates who are kind of this small kind of tactical team who help us kind of triage students and get some of the more at-risk students moving in the right direction. And they were able to triage that list down to, students said they needed help. I called student picked up the phone, which is great for staff morale because most of the time that last bit, student picking up the phone, is the part that doesn't happen. But if a student says, hey, I want help, I'm expecting you to call me, then they do actually pick up the phone when you call them. And I think our numbers were something like, if you interacted with that campaign, right, we call that like a proactive messaging campaign. If you engaged with that campaign and asked for help, you registered at like 76-ish%. If you did not engage with that campaign and did not ask for help, you registered at something like 51%. So it's about 24 percentage point difference just in saying, hey, please help me get this hold off of my account. So to answer your question, I guess, the chatbot really kind of does both of those things. There are ways that we proactively use it, and we do that at the course level too. We can identify students, say, who haven't been to class in 2 or 3 weeks, and they're going to get a different text the next Monday morning than students who have been in class every week, or students who missed an exam. Hey, it looks like you missed exam 1 last week. You can only make up 1 exam, or whatever the kind of make up extra credit type policies are. We work directly with the faculty to make sure that students know where they're kind of standing and what they can do to get back on track. Or, hey, it's time to withdraw. There's nothing you can do this semester. Take the W, try it again next semester, kind of thing, instead of taking the F, right? And in many cases, taking the W is better. So, yeah, that's we're still doing chatbot research at UCF, and I'm still doing chatbot research with the group that I started with back in 2021. We are now doing it. It's now a national research study at Georgia State, at UCF, and at one of the largest HBCUs in the U.S., Morgan State University in Baltimore. So we have 3 sites, and we're doing Gateway Math and Gateway English courses. See if we can make a dent in some of those DFW rates there, because those are the big 2 kind of barriers for student progression here in American higher education.
The information you get must be super valuable as well to the rest of the institution, right? If you've got frequently students asking similar questions, it shows you that perhaps they're struggling with this specific part of the institution. How do we work on that? Is that something that you feed into the rest of the institution?
Ideally, yes. There's about 1.5 of us managing the chatbot right now. So we are currently in the middle of transitioning it over to a team that we've had for a while, but we're kind of reorienting its strategic purpose into what we're calling a student success tools team. So they're currently that team is managing and operating our advising student information system, so EAB. We call it My Night Star, branded for UCF. But yes, the idea would be you kind of take each unit's data at the end of each year, right? So actually, graduate studies just asked us for this. Hey, how did graduate students engage with Nightbot? Nightbot is what we call the institutional chatbot. We're the UCF Knights. So what questions were graduate students asking? What time of day were they texting these in? What day of the week? Those kind of things. So we actually compiled that report for them and sent it over to them. And in the past, I think we've done that kind of unit by unit, mostly as hey, here's all the questions your students asked. Are these the answers that you're still okay with? You were okay with 12 months ago, but is that still right? And no, we have not gotten to the point where we're able to then kind of collect and synthesize that data and make sure that the university community knows about it. Ideally, yes, and I like where your head's at, but that's going to take some more manpower than we have right now.
Well, at least it's on my mind. I think it's just like it's doing like a really like useful thing for students, but you know how you could just tap in and just take that little bit out to do that extra little bit of support. I could chat about this chatbot for the rest of this session, but do you have a specific project that you are most proud of that you want to talk about today, and why did you want to pursue it?
Yeah, I could talk. I didn't even think about the chatbot as the project I'm most proud of, but I am really proud of that research too. And research with a lowercase r. This is not capital R, research that we're going to publish. But yeah, I think specifically talking about kind of getting student level data and using it to inform what we're doing as a student support unit, or at UCF, we like to think about cultivating a healthy and vibrant student success and well-being ecosystem, right? We kind of view all of these different student support units as component parts in a larger whole. And so one of the projects that I'm definitely most proud of is a project that we call Operation Insights. And it's just that. It's developing a data collection system in which everybody is inputting data in a standard and systematic and accurate and consistent way, pulling that data out cleanly and rendering it back to that unit in a way that they can they can use that data to inform their strategy, their kind of daily, weekly, monthly decision making, right? This is all everybody's shaking their head. Yes, this makes sense, right? This is simple stuff. Everybody's doing that. Well, it's not true. I would say we're probably one of a handful of schools across the country that has the student level data available to us that we have now. So that's one that I'm very, very proud of. A little bit of context to that, I guess. We underwent a couple large restructures in the past 2 years. I guess 3 years. UCF as a whole restructured all of our student support units into the Division of Student Success and Wellbeing, kind of in the middle of 2022. Towards the end of 2023, SSWB, so the Division Student Success and Wellbeing, SSWB restructured all of our advisors out of the colleges and centralized them into a new model called Academic Success Coaching, which is a different strategic vision than just kind of advising, which we consider a little more transactional, right? Get registered for classes, make sure you're here, make sure you're there. That's it. Come see me once a semester, you're set. Success coaching is a little bit more relational, right? It's designed to deliver holistic care, not necessarily kind of mental health support and all. We have dedicated staff for that, but this kind of sense of come see me for 15 minutes every couple months. Let's check in, let's make sure that we're doing. So in that model, essentially, my boss asked me, hey, if we're going to be delivering holistic care, we don't have holistic data. So how do we know? We're only looking at one slice of a pie for the student. How do we kind of get a better picture of where each student is at? And that's where Operation Insights was born, was both being able to provide that data to our success coaches so that they can have more data-informed conversations with students. Hey, it looks like you're struggling in biology. That's going to be a really, really critical course for your medicine degree. But students who also struggle in biology can switch over to bioengineering, and that's, they have a little bit more success. Not directing students what to do, but giving them the information they need to make the most informed decision on achieving their, academic, career, and kind of lifelong goals. So both to get the data in the success coach's hands, who are our kind of primary support service, right? There's all kinds of, but we're trying to drive students more towards success coaches. And then also to get the data into leadership's hands, right? If our president comes down and say, hey, we made this big investment in switching all the advisors and centralizing them and calling them success coaches and giving them raises. And I think we're now operating the largest success coaching model in the nation. What are we getting to show for that, right? How many times did we meet with students last semester? What kind of students were they? What were they talking about? That's the kind of data that we now have access to that we've never had access to before. So I can tell you how many students a certain college met with last week and what those sessions were about and when those sessions were, and if that coaching session was the result of a campaign that we had sent out, or if it was the result of a student just proactively scheduling with that ASC. I can tell you what percent of a ASC's roster that ASC has met with. So all of our ASCs have rosters of students that they kind of keep from freshman year to graduation. So this is all really helpful data, both for our understanding of how we're impacting students, and then also the frequency of that impact, and our ability to give ASCs some information about their students that say that help them support students in making the most informed decision for their goals.
That's really good. I think we often have a lot of conversations with people, and students' experiences in college are such a sort of a melting pot of so many different parts of their life that come in that can determine whether or not a student is successful. I remember as on a previous episode, we spoke with somebody, and they mentioned they were a really small university, and they mentioned that one of the things that they look at on student intake is what particular high school a student comes from, because they might know that this particular high school, maybe the maths grades aren't actually as good as other schools in the area, and so those students are sort of flagged that little bit higher up the chain for those initial advisors and things like that. And those small things that you wouldn't necessarily have think about at first thought of what student success can look like, but actually something as simple as what they learned when they were 13 and how that can then impact second year of college can be so big. I guess what was sort of has been some of the more maybe not surprising or sort of interesting pieces of data that you've been able to collect and sort of go, this has actually had a major impact on students and their success and things.
Yeah, it's a good question. So we started this in January of this year. And so this fall semester is the first semester where we've been able to collect kind of what I would consider clean and valid data. So, and our fall semester just ended on Tuesday. So we've got 14 weeks now of data collection. So I can't speak to any kind of causality, obviously, right? Or even, strong correlations as yet. And we don't have grades back yet. So I don't have any impact data on all of this. I can't wait to get, hey, is meeting with an ASC for 15 minutes twice a semester more impactful than meeting with an ASC once for 30 minutes? Questions like that is what we're kind of asking, right? But one of the things that does pop to mind is we also ramped up and really kind of organized and really planned out our campaign strategy to students this semester as part of Operation Insights. Was, all right, if the kind of underlying assumption here is that the more students engage with coaching, the more likely they are to succeed, then how do we get more students to engage with coaching? Well, let's email them and say, hey, you should come meet with me. So we had this kind of email campaign strategy that we can track really well and all this. And one of the things that we found so far is that about 8% of our 28,000 total sessions from this semester were due to a student receiving a campaign, clicking on the link in the campaign, and scheduling from that link. So that's a pretty low percent. I was expecting something higher than, kind of 8% of students reacting to that campaign. We're getting more engagement with those campaigns. You can look at some of them, the open rates at 60, 70%. Some of them have 30 appointments scheduled from that campaign. But you look at campaign by campaign, you're like, oh, there's 30 here, there's 60 there, there's, 14 there. You think about it in the grand scheme of 28,000 appointments across our 150 ASCs. That's 8% is not a sustainable strategy, right? So that data point in and of itself has gone back to our leadership team, and now we're looking at that going, should we be campaigning the way that we're campaigning? Or should we kind of switch the availability of when campaigns? So there's all these little things that go into the strategy behind it that this data is now allowing us to look at and go, well, that wasn't the greatest idea we've ever had as a group. Let's rethink this one. And obviously getting feedback from the ASCs themselves, right? That's been really, really critical for us. Is we've been sharing this data back with them and trying to, getting a context for what does that look like, and why are we seeing some of these numbers, and so we've been really pleased with our ability to kind of open up new ways of looking at our strategies to get students, and really opening up new avenues of conversation between the kind of levels of leadership, staff, and kind of everybody in between being part of this. So that's one data point that comes to mind. And then we've identified 4 or 5 kind of cross sections of the data. So if we're thinking about how we want to serve first-year students, we can isolate that first-year student and look at what GPA ranges are there, what majors are there, right? And so we can kind of look at UCF's overall strategy in terms of becoming a stronger engineering school, and maybe look and see, okay, how many engineers have we been serving? What GPA ranges are those? In what year? Are they mostly 4th-year students that we really need to shift to focusing on 3rd-year students? Those kind of questions. So I don't know if that answers your question about student level data, but that's what came to mind.
Yeah, no, definitely did. Thank you.
So all of this seems like collecting a lot of data. There's a huge amount of data points which you need to collect. What was one of the most challenging things in getting something like this set up across the entirety of the campus?
That we work in higher education. I guess I shouldn't say that, right? I've never worked outside of higher education in my professional career, but one would think, and one always hears about, how higher education is, just loath to change, right? Or update, iterate, all these things. And that's really, kind of due to the nature of how higher education in America is set up, at least. I don't know if it's set up over there the same way, but our kind of shared governance structure, right? We can't do anything without everybody's approval. That's not necessarily true for this project, but that kind of attitude, I think, or at least perspective, does kind of bleed into a lot of what we do as administrators. So one of the most challenging things, I think, was right at the start was, like I said before, my boss kind of asked me, he said, if my boss comes to me, Tyler, and asks me how many coaching sessions did we have last week, I don't know, like that's a pretty simple question I should be able to answer. So can you take your team and go help me answer that question, kind of thing. And so what we did is we started pulling all the data that we had already, right? But all of that data was being input by each different success coaching team in different ways for different reasons. So the data was not defined in a systematic way, was not defined in a standard way. So essentially what I did is I put up a longitudinal graph that showed how many coaching sessions we had week by week, and said, this would be great if coaching sessions was defined the same way by everybody. Then we could actually draw some insights from this kind of thing. So I think the most challenging part was getting making sure that there was a common understanding that the data that we currently had was not sufficient, right? And kind of explaining why is this not sufficient. So really kind of getting into like, this is not clean and this is not valid. What does that mean for us as leadership? What does that mean for staff? And how can we all work together to get clean and valid data? That kind of continual, I guess, reminder of why this is important to have and like why we're asking you to change just a little bit of how you input stuff on the screen is going to have huge dividends, right? So getting the buy-in was one of the most challenging things. One of the ways that we mitigated that is my boss, he's the senior AVP of strategy and innovation at UCF, and he's also the division's chief of staff. So he's a nice person to have in the room and have on your side, right? And so one of the things that we did is we essentially developed a team from Ryan, senior AVP, another AVP was in there, a senior director was in there, 4 or 5 directors were in there, and kind of made this what I have termed before a kind of vertical structure of empowerment, right? If the person who can make the decision on the change is not in the meeting, then everybody in the meeting is just discussing change. They're not deciding on change, right? So what we did is we held kind of bi-weekly meetings with all of the people who could decide on changes in the room, and we decided on changes every 2 weeks until we got to a point where we were like, okay, this makes sense. We can now roll this out. And we had all the people in the room who were going to help us roll it out from day one. We had my data people in the room from day one. So when we got to the point of collecting data, I didn't have to go explain to my data analysts, hey, this is what we want to collect and why. They knew from the jump, and now they're coming to me with ideas. Oh, hey, why aren't we collecting it this way? Didn't we say that this was part of it? Oh, yeah, I didn't even think about that, you know? So kind of having all the people in the room, specifically the leadership who can make the decisions on moving everything forward, is how we kind of overcame the challenge of both buy-in and also momentum, right? Momentum. And we're now, the rubber is hitting the road kind of for the first time. We have spent the last 2 months beginning to share some of the data, at least outright. We're not calling it findings yet because we don't have a full semester's worth of data. But sharing that back out with folks, specifically staff, right, at kind of large all team meetings. And I suspect that the most challenging part is yet to come, right? Where we kind of have ASC level data now, which we've never had before. So directors of each one of the teams can now kind of use this data to have constructive conversations with ASCs about how many students they're seeing and how many students they may not be seeing, and all these kind of high performer. Hey, what did you do last week to hold 80 sessions in 1 week? How did you set up your days? Did you have only 15 minutes? How did those go? Did you feel burnt out? Like, we're trying to figure out how we can get everybody to kind of a happy, consistent medium of seeing a regular amount of students every week without all these spikes, right? Sometimes, especially in higher education, it's like right when we come up to midterms, we go from 30 or 40 in a week to 90 to 100 in a week. And we'd rather pre-stage that and kind of even it out and give everybody a more consistent flow to their job. So I think that's probably going to be one of the more challenging parts is kind of digging into that data and getting it in front of everybody and having those kind of conversations.
I love that you mentioned about getting like the right people in the room to make decisions there and then. Because so often you could sit in the room having great ideas, but you need that one person who can tell you if that great idea is viable, right?
Yeah.
If they're in that
Yep.
room and they're hearing that as well, they can go, okay, yeah, let's just do it. Let's do that. Let's do that. Instead of having to move that great idea and then go over to them separately and go, hey, we spoke about this, it works like this, blah, blah, blah. You just got those different steps in the way, and then trying to articulate it in the same way that you did in that room isn't going to be the same thing. So it's so important to have those people in the same room. Um, just moves stuff way quicker, especially in higher education as well. Having all this data is super useful for yourself. How have other people responded to it?
Very positively so far. Very positively. We haven't showed him any of the bad stuff though, so no. We are I think everybody that's part of this team and I think everybody, I think all the ASCs that are part of the model have been I'm surprised maybe isn't the right word, but we've just never had this level of data before, right? So like even 6 months ago, we didn't have the ability to answer some of the questions that we can very simply answer now. So that's been really encouraging, really motivating for me and my team to kind of continue on this path. And as we're talking to others out there, over the summer, I talked to a few of the leadership in Nakata, which is a advising kind of professional group. And we were just sharing with them what our plans were for this fall, right? We were kind of 6 months into the building and planning of the foundations of how are we going to ask our advising community to change the way that they're inputting the data about their student sessions. And that's where we were at that point. And all I had was the vision for how we were going to get all this data over the summer. But even sharing that vision out with them, and everybody was very interested and very excited about the potential of what we could do. And I can tell you now that we have fulfilled that potential and then some. So our plan very much in 2026 is going to be sharing this out with the rest of the field, mainly so that we can help others get to this point if they so desire, right? That's kind of our whole goal. Brings it back to the front. I've always wanted to be a teacher, and that's what I still want to do. So as we learn at UCF, we feel like it's our responsibility to help others get to where we got, because we learned how to do this from other people too. And if we can do it at UCF, being one of the top 3 largest universities in the nation, you can pretty much do it anywhere, right? We're doing it at a scale of 60,000 undergrads, 10,000 grads. If you can do it there with 150 plus success coaches, then you can definitely implement this kind of, Operation Insights at, 20,000 students and, maybe 25, 30, 40 advisors kind of thing. So we feel like we feel like when we figure out how to do things at scale, then it's a lot easier to bring to the rest of the field who maybe aren't at our large of a scale. And we can get to sample size, statistically significant sample size very quickly. So all of our kind of like our chatbot, our course level chatbot research, we're driving the sample size for that national pool, or that kind of all the sites. So that's our plan right now, is to take what we've done and help other people, help other institutions figure out the way to do that in their context. It's not going to look the same as what we did, but how do you do it with the resources you have, the folks you have, the student type that you have? Because everybody's been really excited about what we've been able to do so far.
I really like that. I think we work a lot with data as an organization as well, and I think we've gone on a similar journey ourselves, right? We're a company of only about 100, 150 people, but we have hundreds of conversations every single day, internally, externally. Some of us are at conferences, we're chatting with all sorts of different people, and it can sometimes be very easy for information to get passed along almost like broken telephone, where it's, oh, well, I heard about this from this person, but you have no way to quantify if that is something that is useful. Or I heard this stat, and it can be very difficult to pull all of that information together. And we've sort of gone on a similar journey in that sense of how are we going to quantify this information? Where can we store that, create that sort of knowledge base for us all? And I can attest from my own personal standpoint in a company of 100 that having that centralized knowledge base is so useful because it saves everybody time in finding information and feeding things back and getting things changed. So doing that on a scale that you're talking about of 100 advisors in one department and then 80,000 students on top of that, you can see how very quickly that becomes so revolutionary, and it creates that two-way street between data coming in and then the outputs going the other way and the changes that
Yeah.
need to be made. So that's fantastic. I think when you said about that next step being we want to share this with the rest of the community, what's the plan for the sharing of that? Have you got things in coming up over the next year or so to start spreading the word?
I wish we already had all that planned out. We do not yet. Our first step is to kind of share everything that we've done with our executive level leadership, right? So towards the end of this year, I think in the next couple of weeks, we're going to put together our, this is what we did from January 1st of this year until now to kind of get this ball rolling. And this is where we're at today. And then from there, definitely try and hit all of the major advising conferences next year and just kind of share out. This is not only the results that we've seen, and here's some findings that may apply also to your students and your institutional context. So if you're seeing this much of a certain GPA, here's what we did to see more of that murky middle GPA, right? So those kind of things, but also that vertical structure of empowerment idea too, right? Not only these are the kind of strategies that we've deployed that have helped us have more of an impact, but also how did we even get here in the first place? Who was in the room and what did we talk about and what steps did we take to get there? So that's definitely our plan, is to kind of make it a not only a how do you better impact your students, but also how do you design a system that is less onerous on your staff, right? That's more efficient, more effective, that's streamlining things for both students and staff. And what does that look like in those meetings? For the first 3 months, this is all we did. We decided on which metrics we wanted to track. Right? We did nothing other than say, do we want to track this one? Yes. Do we want to check this one? No. Okay. Why do we want to check this one? What are we going to do with this? If I track how many unique students each ASC sees, what are you going to do with it, ASC director? If you can't tell me that you are going to use that insight and deploy it in a certain way, then we don't need to track it, right? So we're not tracking everything under the sun. We're specifically tracking certain things that are going to get us those cross sections of kind of what's the LinkedIn word, KPIs or something like that, right? What are those cross sections we want to see movement on? Because our goal is to increase our 4-year graduation rate. Well, if we implement a new strategy fall 25, we're not going to know if that strategy had even any kind of correlation until fall 29. We can't wait until fall 29. So what are those leading indicators, right? So all these kind of ideas, we definitely want to include in our rollout. And I think just to touch on what you were saying there, James, one of the most critical things about that kind of common data set, so to speak, is not only everybody can kind of see all the same data, but it becomes that single source of truth, right? So one team isn't looking at, oh, well, I've had this many sessions, and one team, I've had this many, and they're pulling it from different places, and they both mean different things. So having that kind of centralized source of data really does help everybody better understand kind of where we're at from that single place.
I was thinking about something you said earlier where you were talking about a campaign which went out, and people view data as like, cool, we're going to have this data so we understand what we need to do going forward. But I like data also informs what you're doing wrong currently or what you were doing wrong in the past, right? So in the past, if you didn't have the data, you were just doing the same thing, not knowing it wasn't working. From the data which you've got out so far, is there anything that stands out to you that you can remember that you were like, we've been doing this for so long and it's not been working because now I can see it isn't?
I think the best example is the one I've already given. I think the percent of sessions that are held kind of as a result of campaigning students. So here's a interesting data point. So one of the things that one of the strategies that we're trying to deploy with success coaching is something called follow-up appointments, right? We want to make sure that students are coming in maybe 2 or 3 times a semester, not for an hour long each, right? Just check in with your ASC 15 minutes a semester, maybe twice a semester, that kind of thing, 2 or 3 times over a academic year. And one of the ways that we want to track how well we're doing that is how many of our future appointments are being scheduled by the ASC versus by the student. So if I'm in my first session of the fall, at the end of that session, ASC says something like, hey, let's meet one more time before the end of the term. Let's go ahead and get that scheduled right now. I'll schedule it for you. The number of sessions that are scheduled by an ASC in the future versus number of sessions that are scheduled by a student is one of the kind of proxy measures that we're using to check on follow-up appointments. Now, that's not always true because they could say, hey, we need to meet in December, and the student could whip out their phone and do it right there. So it's not an exact measure, but we're looking at something like as our starting point. And again, this is just 14 weeks of data. 11.5% of appointments scheduled in the next 30 days were scheduled by an ASC. That's 11.5% of 2,700. So we have 2,700 appointments scheduled in the next month. In 2 months from now, 31 to 60 days, 87% of those appointments are scheduled by the ASC, and 3 months from now, 98% are scheduled by the ASC. So we can kind of read that as, okay, we've really been pushing this type of strategy just in the last couple months, right? So ASCs are starting to apply that strategy for January, February appointments, not for December appointment. Doesn't really make sense, right? But we can kind of look and see the difference between this next month, this kind of end of the school year, and then where ASCs may be applying that type of strategy in the future, and a huge jump from 11% to 87% to 98% as we move from month 1, 2 to 3 kind of thing. So that's a really interesting data point. And that's all it is interesting right now, right? This is kind of the first marker in what could potentially be a trend. But I think that's the other thing that we've been really careful of in rolling this out is we haven't rolled this out with, oh, this is the data that we're seeing and this is the benchmark and we're not hitting that. That's not what we're doing at all. We're saying all we're doing is trying to collect data in a clean and valid way. We're going to share that data back with you, and then we're going to make collective discussion decisions on what makes sense as a benchmark, what then makes sense as a goal to hit. We're not trying to do any of that without gathering a whole semester's worth of data first. But that would be a interesting, we maybe more of a success in a potential strategy that we want to deploy rather than this one's just really not working. One of the ones that's really difficult for us that is a strategy that currently I would suggest is not necessarily working is we meet with a lot of 3.0 and above students, right? 3.0 GPA and higher students. Our goal, right, is to start meeting with more kind of 2.5 to 3.5, 2.0 to 3.0 kind of students. That's one of those cross sections of the data that we say, if we're meeting with more 2.0 to 3.0 students, we expect our 4-year graduation rate to go up, right? That's kind of a leading indicator of that. Now, it's really difficult at UCF because a lot of our students are 3.0 and above students, right? It's something like 67% of our student body is 3.0. So how do you go tackle that kind of 1/3 of our student body who's not? Those are typically the students who are not going to pick up the phone, who are not going to answer the email, and if they do make an appointment, aren't going to no-show, right? And I'm not trying to stereotype any of those students. I'm literally looking at the data. If you switch from 3.0 and higher no-show rate, it's something like 8%. So they've scheduled a meeting, but they just did not show up to that coaching session. If you switch from 2.0 to 3.0 student, that no-show rate jumps from 8% to like 22%. So maybe we are finally getting in contact with them, but then a fifth of the time we're not able to actually have that session. And there's a number of different reasons for that. These are probably working students, maybe first gen students, right? Parents, all this kind of stuff. So what are some strategies that we can deploy? Again, trying to be a holistic kind of model. What are some strategies we can deploy that help that kind of student out? Maybe we hold sessions in the evenings, 2 or 3 days a week. Maybe we have kind of more like group sessions virtually. Maybe we go meet them in our downtown campus. Like what are some of the ways that we can help boost that kind of murky middle? I don't know yet because we don't have all of that data in, but that is one of those things that we're looking at we don't need to be meeting with our 4.0 students 3 times a semester. We need to meet with them once. We need to meet with our 2.0 students 3 times a semester kind of thing. So that's going to be a really interesting data point that we want to continue to track. That I would say right now we're not where we want to be on.
That's really useful insight, and I'd be really interested to see how that proactive booking of those meetings sort of ebbs and flows over the next couple of years. Like you said, I think my initial reaction to it is you as staff know the ebbs and flows of when students need that support, get that in. Whereas a lot of the time, I know certainly my experience as a student, I didn't need help until I really needed help, and I needed it immediately. And it's so I'm not booking something in 2 months' time. I'm sure I'll be fine by then. It's only
Right.
midterms, and then midterms arrive, and I need a meeting straight away. But being able to then have that data over time and say to students, well, 2.5 GPA student, other students in the past have had similar experiences to you, and what we know works is this. It's going to be so valuable, not just internally, but in those actual communications with students to say, we have met with 1,000 of you before, and this is what, this is the playbook that we've found. Here's the stats. It's going to be so powerful for you to be able to have that in the future for that internal and external. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So yeah, we can give that data just like you were talking about, James, to be able to email to a student, hey, in week 8, I am going to have 0 availability because I've had 0 availability in week 8 for the last 2 semesters, but I have lots of availability in week 4. If you want to come see me in week 4, we could take some time, and you're going to get all the information that you need for week 8 too. And kind of try and pre-stage some of those spikes in where students are going, I can't see my ASC. They don't have any availability. Well, just like you did, James, as soon as midterms come up, everybody tries to see their ASC in that week, and there's only so many hours in a week, right? So I did the same thing, except for when I needed help, I didn't even know I could go to my advisor to see them. That's so at least we're doing better than that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we found that as well as an organization when when we're trying to help drive student utilization of our tool, right? Be using different messaging and saying to students, this amount of students improves their confidence and things. Why don't you get in on this? Is going to resonate more as a message than here are the features. This is the impact that it's going to have, and doing that same sort of thing of we can talk about this, and this in a session versus this is what the session will give you as a student. I think it's super useful. I guess as we come to sort of the end of the podcast, it'd be really great to just sort of hear if you've got one piece of advice, let's say one piece of advice for anybody listening today that is looking to roll out something similar. How do they get started? What's that sort of key thing that you would say to them?
Oh, just one. Like I'm some kind of fount of knowledge, right? Um, I think 2 things spring to mind, but I think they're connected. One is start to ask a really simple question that your leadership may ask you at some point, right? Our simple question was, how many coaching sessions did we have last semester? We can pull the data that shows us how many appointment summaries were submitted by people that we call success coaches, but that is not the definition of a coaching session, right? Some of those might have been emails, some of those might have been phone calls that never went through. Like there were so many different ways people would be submitting this form that was counting towards what we would have previously, so figure out a really simple data point that you would, or figure out a really simple question that you want to answer, and then go see if you can answer that question using the data you currently have at your disposal. And then the second thing is when almost inevitably you can't, get your data people wherever they sit in your organization and bring them on the journey with you from the start, because none of this happens without our data analysts being able to collect clean, consistent data out of 2 or 3 disparate CRMs, bring them together somehow in their magical data land, and then regurgitate them, render them back to us in a dashboard, in a Power BI dashboard, right? If those folks don't really understand the strategy behind why we're collecting this data, don't really understand what we're trying to render the data into so that people can use it, if you have to go explain that to your data analysts week after week and they're not just in those conversations hearing it, it's a lot more difficult of a process, and you're going to result with things that data people want to see and not things that, leadership and staff of people who are dealing with students want to see. Not that the things that people want to see are bad. They're normally incredible. They're normally just somewhat, not as readily usable as some of the other stuff. So that's what I would say is, start with a really simple question that you want answered and see if your data can answer it. If it can't answer it, or if you think it can answer it, but a data person comes in and says, no, actually, that's not what this means, then keep those people around and insert them into that kind of vertical structure of empowerment and move forward, just trying to answer that question and see where you get.
I love that advice. I think that would get so many people like questioning themselves a lot, right? If I go out and just try and search for this one answer, oh dear, I cannot find the answer to this. What things do I need to put in place? It like sparks that urgency almost in I just want this one answer. I can't get it. Super useful. This has been a very enjoyable chat, Tyler.
Same. I think so too.
Amazing. Well, we would love to have you on in a year's time and talk about where the data's at and what's happening. That'd be very interesting. This time next year, I'm sure you would have implemented lots of cool stuff because of the data.
I assume so. Yes.
And we can talk about your conference run as well.
Yeah. Hopefully, I'll have it a little more polished up, and we can actually talk about. So the one big missing piece from all of this, obviously, is the impact, right? We don't have our academic outcomes for this semester yet. We'll have those in a couple weeks, but the idea is to attach, last term GPA and then this term GPA to each student, and then go see what was the most impactful thing that we did as a ASC model, that drove a difference in academic outcomes. Now that's just one slice of the pie. We're a holistic model too. So how do we start to collect engagement data or, students' sense of belonging or meaning, those kind of things. So we're also adding some of that qualitative and kind of more holistic data set to this. But last piece of advice, I guess, is this is a phase approach, right? We're not trying to tackle all of it at once. We're trying to tackle this part this semester. Next semester, we're going to add a little bit more. Semester of that, add a little bit more. And so, yeah, hopefully in a year's time, we'll have all that impact data in here too, and we can really talk about the strategies that are working and the strategies that are most impactful.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, thank you once again. We'll leave it there, and cool. We wish you a good day.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. Thanks, James.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap. Thank you so much for joining us on Learning Outcome Leaders. We hope you found the conversation valuable and that it gave you some ideas for how you can elevate your own student experience. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. Until next time, have an amazing day.